Megan, Emily. You all know Lily? Lily works up in the superintendent's office. She's going to help us with these meetings. Andrew, I think you've met Lily before.
Yeah, that's the last one.
Lily, do you know everybody?
Yes, I do.
You wish you didn't know Nancy? Not that Nancy, this one.
Both of them are wonderful.
Oh,
That's a good answer.
Chocolate's your way. We're ready whenever you are, Mr. Becker.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the Education Committee meeting to order at 4 o'clock. We'll do roll call, and then for the purposes of the audio recording, we'll have everyone around the table to say who they are and their position. So Warren.
Here.
Welch.
Here.
Becker here. So all committee members are present, and then if we can just go around the room and say your name and your position, and then we'll have it for the audio recording.
Megan Jonnet, Intercity Student Council member.
Emily Cap, Intercity Student Council member.
Andrea Landwehr, Executive Director of Elementary Education.
Nancy Chartier, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning.
Vicki Byer, Deputy Superintendent.
Steve Morley, Superintendent.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have one form for public participation from Noah Becker. If you want to come.
Sam, you guys can hear.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I just have my phone here to make sure I don't mess up the scenario I'm advocating. I am here to advocate for start times to more senior members of the board. This is an unfortunate reoccurrence of hearing you discuss, but here I am again, and it looks like we're at committee, so I'm glad to finally see some progress being made on this. I was on the CISA committee way back in the day when we formed these recommendations. In committee, I advocated something perhaps even more aggressive than the two scenarios that made it into the final report. I put in a minority report if you wish to bore yourself and go read that. It is available somewhere. But from the ones we got here, I think scenario B, which would be the later start time for high school, makes the most sense. As for, I guess, because scenario one, if you're going to, forgive me, mess it up anyway with the messing up the schedule and everything, you might as well go all the way and make sure you're getting the most benefit from it. And that's why I think the slightly later start time of scenario B is going to give a bit more advantage to students and everything. Yeah, I mean, you guys have seen the report and that, like the hundreds of pages of benefits that you get from having some extra delay in the start time. So I think to really capitalize on that, going with scenario B would probably be the most helpful. There is definite truth in extracurriculars, but those are voluntary. And so I don't feel this is going to be a significant negative impact on students, because generally those who are participating in the extracurriculars make up for what they might miss out in class time. So I think that will sort of balance itself out. And especially the 0 hour, I would hope that 0 hours wouldn't be the only block in which certain classes run, because I know that is how it has to happen in some districts, but that would sort of defeat the purpose, especially for some of the smaller AP courses that tend to run in those 0 hour blocks. So I hope that if the 0 hour is introduced, it's more for scheduling and helping students than it is for getting extra blocks and extra sections to run that only can fit in 0 hour. if that is looked at. I appreciate being fiscally responsible and all that, like it says in here. I would love to see more on that if the committee does decide to go with scenario B, see kind of how a 0 hour could be implemented, because that could be a big part of the conversation on start times in general going forward. And I think it could really open some new opportunities for interested students to get a little bit more out of their schedule, perhaps in a lot of circumstances. And for those that aren't interested in 0 hour, later start time, you can read all the benefits, fewer accidents driving to school and all that kind of stuff. So I encourage the committee to go with scenario B if possible, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, so we have for our first discussion item, kind of a combined item about school start time and extended elementary school day. And Ms. Beyer, if you want to introduce the topic, and then if you have the first speaker.
Sure, I'll cover the first one actually, and the purpose of us bringing this to the committee was by request. Mr. Becker asked that we bring it back for discussion. And at the conclusion, we are going to ask the board to provide direction for next steps for both of these topics. The memo references that back in October of 2018, the Board of Education tasked us with collaborating with CESA 7 and forming a task force to explore changing the school start time to address any concern about early starts for our high schoolers and middle schoolers. They came forward with 2 recommendations, scenario A and scenario B, which you can find on the memo. I would just point out to the board members that this was completed several years ago. There were still steps that we hadn't taken, digging into, as Noah had mentioned, any financial repercussions. And we would need to revisit DPI minutes to ensure that we're meeting those and as recommended by the task force to take a look at middle and elementary instructional time. If we do make adjustments, is there an opportunity there to get more closely aligned with our neighbors? Andrea, do you want to summarize the elementary, please?
Yes, in 2015-16 school year, there was a very intensive task force that looked at extending the student instructional day. When you look at a curriculum, it needs to be guaranteed and viable. Guaranteed meaning all students have access. Viable meaning that you can implement it as designed. So in 2015-16, we entered into a 2-year process where we examined the instructional minutes for the Green Bay School District in comparison to surrounding neighborhoods. And we found that we do have fewer instructional minutes than any of the surrounding neighborhoods in the districts. In addition to that, we talked a lot about, at that time, we were working with Dr. Reddick, scheduling consultant firm, and then also with Solution Tree, where we talked a lot about professional learning communities and that collaborative learning teams are the driver for increased professional practice and professional growth within the school. So we talked about changing our schedule where we would add a 4-day rotation that would allow daily, Monday through Friday, teachers to have 45 minutes of release time during the day that would allow them to do their collaborative learning with their peers, so all their professional development during the day while the students are working with the related arts teachers. So our ask today is the board, what would the board's direction be? Would you like us to move forward with our exploration? And so we are looking for direction from the board.
All right, I'll go to committee members first, and questions or comments from members first.
Was your question, Andrea, for both of these things or specifically the elementary?
So, Oh, go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, both.
Okay,
They don't have to be coupled together.
right, right.
And maybe we should take them one at a time, because I think one's more, so I would start with, we'll turn to committee members for school start time.
I mean, I think one of the report makes it sound as if, you know, the busing is going to be a challenge, but we'll somehow figure out the busing. I'd be interested, and I forgot to do this. I don't know if costs, I don't think costs are written into that original report either. You know, I'd be interested in, not that, I'd just be interested in knowing the difference in cost between A and B as one of the factors. I mean, that's not gonna, I'm not just gonna pick one because it costs less. But that would be one of the things. And then I think too, again, that there was a plan for merging in the extended elementary time, I think, sort of that step-by-step process. I'd be interested in knowing, you know, how this would be rolled out. I mean, would it just happen the beginning of one school year, and what would be some of the challenges with, I mean, I think it has to be all rolled out at once, because you can't change high school without changing elementary start times. But if we were to also add extended time, you know, would that need to be wrapped into the same thing? Because as I think about it, I think, you know, busing is probably the most complicated part of this. And if we decide we know we're going to add extended time to the elementary day, it seems like all of that should happen at the same time. Otherwise, we're going to design a busing schedule for late start that actually prohibits our choices in some cases for what we do with elementary. So it seems to me that it has to happen kind of all at once. And so, you know, and again, I'd be interested in cost. Well, I'll leave that for the elementary part.
Okay.
Nancy,
Would this, this wouldn't go in this year, for sure, right?
Oh, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if this doesn't go in, then the extended 30 minutes is not going to go in as well this year.
Right.
Okay, that gives us some real time to think about it. then.
Right.
Okay, you know, like I remember a long time ago when they first started talking about this in the district, and you know, it has merit, you know, this later start time for the older kids. I mean, that's been proven over and over again. So I think you really put a lot of time into this, but now to dwindle it down to the 2, and the cost is probably the main thing to look at.
any other comments? Yes. Yes.
Another question. Another thing, and I remember a conversation about this, but in terms of impact on co-curriculars, I think especially athletics, because our own internal clubs and things can be on their own schedule, but as soon as you're interfacing with other schools, then you can't just dictate the schedule. And I know that there are lots of the games that are played are actually later at night. I'm just wondering how many of our sports would be impacted by a later end time, and how much. And then, you know, obviously a later end time, and then they're missing an extra period in the day if they have to leave earlier than the end of the day.
Most commonly, yeah, you're right, Brenda. Most commonly impacts the spring sports. And Megan and Emily could probably attest to, a lot of our students in spring sports already get out early
Right.
based on the current schedule. So to your point, it might be 2 classes that they're missing instead of just 1.
Yeah. And I, you know, having lived through that with my own kids, and one of them sailed through, and the other one, it just started freaking him out because he was missing the same class period, you know, 2 times a week, because he was in track, which they had to leave early for those. You know, I guess has anyone given any thought to kind of cushioning that impact? I mean, I know we can schedule kids potentially for study hall last period, and you know, has there been thought to trying to increase the number of kids in a last hour study period rather than a class that they're missing those kinds of things.
I've been in a district that tried to do that. It'd be interesting to explore again. But teachers' schedule makes that very difficult. So your
Right.
AP classes typically can't run at the end of the day, but you might have a teacher that needs to fill up all those
Yeah.
periods. It's complex. you know,
Yeah, I just want, I just think that we start thinking out of the box in terms of helping those students, because that's, depending on the class, that can be a huge challenge to continue, succeeding in that class.
How about from the ICS Europe?
I guess to like, I definitely kind of agree with your perspective, Norm, about even like sports and things like that, but as well as like if we change the school day for students, it might also affect like work and things like that. I know for myself, like I have to work in order to like pay for certain things and things like that in my life. And so if we change that, I think there are other students who would also be affected with that. And I know for some students, it might be, I guess, taking a look maybe at, I don't know if this would work, if you did a certain school that had like that 0 period available so that you could attend earlier. Because I know for the student like myself, I can wake up at 7:30 or 7 and be fine to go for 7:30. But I know like even my brother, he's total opposite, where that extra time would definitely help him. But then you run the risk of having students who are unable to, so if we get done an hour later, that's an hour that I can't work and an extra hour of pay that I have to cut in order to provide for myself and things like that. And to go back to the sports and extracurriculars, there are also like other extracurriculars that I know run that aren't necessarily affiliated with the schools, like church groups or things like that. And they might have to take a look at like if that would start running into certain things, maybe.
Good point.
Well, one thing with track is we're already missing almost 2 periods, because you leave 7th hour, like 15 minutes in. So then we'd be missing 3 periods of the day, kind of to put that in perspective too. Almost full 3,
And you do that twice a week.
twice a week, yeah.
Yeah, because all the track meets are multi, they're not dual track meets.
Yeah.
There are 8 schools show up, so they have to get started earlier than if it's a dual meet.
Okay.
But sometimes we host.
Yeah, right, but very seldom. Very seldom. I mean, I think we had 1 dual meet and 1 meet at home during the entire track season when my son was in track. Because there's 10 teams that are, so each of them take a turn, and then there's your 10 big track meets, and maybe you have a dual meet.
Would that mean we were hosting 4 of them?
No, if
There were-
there's 10
there were
teams,
10
and they
teams.
each take a turn, that's 10 meets.
Right, but-
And each school hosts 1.
Right, so 4 of the 10 would be at. Green
Oh,
Bay.
in our
In our district,
schools,
right,
yeah.
so. That was one, when it comes to, I guess where I look at it is the science about the advantages for this age group starting later are completely, utterly one-sided in favor of starting later. There's no, from an educational and like brain development perspective, there isn't even really a credible opposing side to it that I've been able to find. So it becomes operational issues, like sports, like busing. When I look at, for me, when I look at scenario A, in addition to not really changing the day enough to be that to really address the sleep issue, it seems like that would be much more likely to be a serious busing problem, because elementaries would start at 8 or 9, with high schools at 8:10, middle schools at 3:15, and then it takes it very tight, where if you had 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock elementary, probably the middle and high school would fit in the middle better with more of a cushion. I'm a supporter of I'm a supporter of, did I say the scenarios backwards?
A is the.
8, 10.
Yeah, so I actually favor B, but I wrote B down first on my sheet, so I probably said A. So the first scenario, no. I'll just say the 8:30 high school scenario keeps it spaced out a little better. And I would think that would almost certainly be easier for shared busing because you'd have things just piled in way too tight probably. I mean, I know there's people who know more about the busing issues that I do, but we could have theoretically, you know, in the morning, we'd have 8, 8:10 and 8:15 start times across all the grades. And we'd have 3:25, 3:33 and 3:40 end time. So I think that gets a lot trickier. I guess,
Except, it says under B that it's a tighter busing schedule. Do you know why that is?
I
'Cause it's, is it the numbers of kids? But they're all 8 and 9. The elementary kids are all 8 and 9 on both scenarios. So
right, so
it's-
it seems to me A is clearly a tighter busing schedule, so
Unless
maybe
they're
we can.
busing
20 minutes.
middle school and high school together, because they're only 5 minutes apart, and then they would not at 15 minutes apart, maybe they're busing high school and middle school separately.
But they still have to, I mean, just
Well, if they,
making the stop sign time could be, you know, if there's any,
well, I just think it requires an extra bus. If you're doing high school, and middle school together, and you have 2 separate routes, I mean, you have 1 route for middle school, high school. If you're doing them separately, you've got 2 routes for every, I mean, it's fewer routes probably because they'll, fewer kids to pick up. But anyway, I just was wondering why it said that. It didn't quite make sense to me either.
I can reach out to some members of the task force to see if they recall.
Did the task force find or know and study a school district that has done this, that is kind of the size of Green Bay?
I think they did
I would
multiple.
think,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that was part of the entire.
Yeah, so then, you know, what were, they solved these problems or did it not work or?
Somewhere it didn't work. They went back. I can't remember where that was. I have no idea. I just remember that there was a district that did all this and then went back to the old way.
I vaguely recall that discussion
But
as
I
well.
can't remember, but I think the majority of them figured it
Figured it
out.
out.
and moved forward, yeah.
And
I mean, I at this point would be leaning toward B also. But again, I'd want to hear some of the information that I asked for in terms of cost and the co-curricular schedules and the busing.
do they, excuse me, do they bus on the same bus, high school and middle school students together? Is that what you were talking about?
Mhm.
Are they doing that?
Lori Blakely, do you know,
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
do we bus middle and high school students together? Or Josh? Is Josh here?
Like when I was
I'm not
teaching
sure.
middle school, if they
That
didn't.
they were all bused separately.
The last I knew, I haven't taken a bus in a while, but the last I knew, it was all separate. The only like middle schoolers would be middle schoolers that attended the high school.
And then some of them would take the city bus, you know, some of those kids would be high school and middle school, but I never,
Yeah.
I have a question. Is it like a potential, because I know right now for the juniors and seniors, we can look at having 1 through 6 schedules or things like that. Would there be an option to maybe extend that to like younger grades if they can meet like the transportation needs? So if there's, let's say, a freshman who'd rather go like a 1 through 6, is that something we could look into potentially so that they could still maybe have their needs met as far as having to work after school or certain things like that, as far as having enough time?
So similar to a 0 hour, an extra opportunity to take a class at a different time outside of the traditional school day.
or to take the standard number of classes and leave early and not have study hall.
And not
Because
have
what I
lunch.
have is I have like, I don't take a lunch and I just attend school 1 through 6 hours. So then I get done and I can go to work for 2 o'clock and then work like the rest of like have extracurriculars and things like that. So if that better fits a student's schedule, then I attend at the same time to begin with, but then you don't have to worry about adding in that extra period.
I see.
And because I thought that probably at least that it's only like offered to juniors and seniors. So we could maybe extend that if they're able to meet those transportation needs, then you don't have to worry about the transportation aspect of that too. That might help please some other people who might want that earlier option of at least getting out of school.
Especially if we already have it at some level. And I would hate to have something, I think that definitely could address that could address a lot of concerns actually to have the 1 through 6, something like the 1 through 6 option for people who don't want to be there till 4. They could still get the benefit of the later, the later start time and take all their classes. My concern about the 0 hour, if we have a 0 hour, ideally, I would like to see singletons being a single offering of a class in a school. I would like to see those barred from being held in 0 hour, because that would take that class and force them to go against exactly what we just said about the brain science and everything. And I would want to do that by, like, if we're changing policy to start later, I would like to see that, that 0 hour can be good. If people just run on an earlier schedule, if we can put in some, language arts or something that everyone takes multiple sessions and people want to do that, that's fine. Also too, I would hate to see the benefits of this, which are the science is overwhelmingly clear on it being better. Just overwhelming, and that does trickle into traffic safety and all kinds of other things. But first and foremost, just looking at the educational benefits of it. I also think it's harder for co-curriculars if we were a 1 school district trying it, we have less leverage than being a large district. So like for track, 40% of the time we're hosting, and it's just gonna start when we're out of school. That's just life. So we so as a bonus, then I guess the travel schools won't miss class either, and maybe, who knows, maybe they'll come to like the later start times as well. So I would strongly advocate for I would like to see us try the 8:30 start time, but I think there's important considerations for those who need to end the day earlier. I believe that I also don't like throwing out a good idea because of perceived equity, as long as there's alternatives. And I think it should be explored for those who want to choose a 1 through 6. We're probably not going to have two school bus runs unless numbers, dictated it. But where does the city bus fit into that with our arrangement to have the unlimited city bus for our students? That was negotiated some years ago by former board member, now clerk Jeffries, city clerk. I just think there's, to me, if we're supposed to be focusing on, the educational benefits first, those are clear, and I would like to see us try to make the rest of the things fall into place. My biggest worry is a creeping 0 hour that would undo the whole thing, or undo it. That's the one thing that I could see being a bit of an equity issue if we allowed kids taking certain classes to be forced into 0. So I think it would have to be no singletons. For me, I would also, this was a very, I have some different thoughts on the other issue here. this was a comprehensive district-wide committee that we probably would have acted on sooner if it wasn't for COVID. I don't think there's much benefit in going back to rehash this. We did it over a whole year. I think the board just needs to make a decision based on, based on the information here. The sign, a decision as far as, are we gonna just say no to this, or are we going to ask for the other issues to be addressed? Which I personally, I think it's without question worth merit to ask for the other issues to be investigated. That's for me.
I'm a little confused. Can you clarify? Are you still talking about just the busing thing?
Well, I'm talking about, so school start time in general.
Right.
My point was that if our primary focus is supposed to be on the education,
Okay.
then our slant should be towards doing the thing that's best for education and then making the other things work versus letting the side issues get in the way of the education. And on the flip side, if the if the research was that, educational performance is the same, but it's better for, you win sports more if you start late. Well, I probably wouldn't overturn the apple cart for that, but if it's overwhelmingly educationally better, I think we should. So I would propose that we that the committee report would be given in favor of further investigation by administration. Okay.
No, I don't want the committee report to recommend A or B. I just want them to, I think the committee report should say we're looking into more information. I mean, I think the committee, I don't know about you.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah.
in full favor of doing something like,
Really looking
for
at
the same reasons you've mentioned, Andrew.
This
But
was
I
really
do-
a comprehensive committee, wasn't it? I mean, you spent a lot of time on this,
Yeah,
right?
I didn't, I wasn't on the
Oh,
committee.
Okay, who was on the committee? Anybody
It was
here?
Rhonda and,
Two former.
Rhonda and
members.
Christina.
Okay, okay.
and lots of other people. And there
Like
was like
CISA,
50,
seven,
there's
right?
50
Yeah.
people on the committee. It was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the decision is this scenario A or B or something in between, because when we look at the logistics and operation of it, something can't happen, so we need to fudge or adjust the times as opposed to say we can't do it. I'm not in favor of not doing it. Back to the 1 through 6 hour, that's I think in general, it's a missed study hall, missed lunch. So you're taking 6 academic classes all in a row. And I think there was some conversation about shortening the lunch hour. I know that's not a popular topic, but because this still includes an hour for lunch. And again, I'm not a scheduler and I can't even imagine how hard it is to schedule. But the thought occurred to me sitting here is, could there be a 6.5 day where you have a half hour for lunch and you take your 6 classes? Again, I don't have no idea if that's even doable. I just know that at middle school, they're alternating their lunches. They don't have an hour for lunch, they have half hour and they're alternated in between, and somehow they manage to get to the point where they're all in 6th hour at the same time. And I don't know if something like that is possible. I don't know. I don't even, you'd have to poll students and see if that's even something that they'd be interested in doing.
Something, otherwise, I know we've seen how online schooling has gone for some students, but if some students feel like inclined, I know I do get a lunch because I'm taking one course entirely online through GB. So that would be an option. So really I go to school for 5 classes, but one of them is just online. So I do it on my own time. So I'm going to use my lunch as that, but it does also provide me that option for a lunch. So I don't know because I know online success is entirely different thing, but I know for myself, I did have that success, so that's why I elected to take it like this, because it just fit my schedule better. So if that's an option for some of those students.
That's a good point too, I hadn't thought of that.
I was also thinking about, like, I know health and Phy-Ed is offered in the summertime. Is that still going on? Like, so they don't have to use those hours of,
Is it?
Yes.
yeah. So, and I was wondering if that could be used a little more often, so kids could go to the 1-6 or whatever. I don't understand, you know, the 1-6, that sounds pretty
It's a
compact.
heavy lift.
It's a
Yeah,
heavy lift, not everybody can do it.
Yeah, I think those would be good for some, you know, for some people. I think, you know, offering if having if 1 through 6 or even 1 through 7 with a lunch, if that's legal per DPI, which it is, I don't see why we need to be more prescriptive than that, and basically forcing a study hall on students choosing not to take, you know, students choosing to take 6 classes, we're forcing them to take a study hall, except if they do 1-6 at Preble. I think you'd see 1-6 and probably even more of maybe a 1 through 7 as well. I think you see people taking that. Okay, so it looks like we'll be forwarding, well, I'll present the summary with regards to school start time with a recommendation to the board that we do something and that we request the administration to look into the subsidiary issues with a primary focus being on if the educational merits are there, that should be top driver. So, all right. Anything else? Okay, and if we could continue, we looked committee member questions regarding the extended elementary day options. Nancy?
well, the first one was already answered, that this would not be implemented this year, so, okay. And then I was wondering, I know it was like 6 years ago, you said that this was actually, are there still any people that were on that original committee that are looking at it, or do you know who they are? And
So in the 2015-16 school year, 2014-15, and then 2015-16, each elementary school had a team of 4 to 5 teachers, coaches, interventionists who worked with Ann Barsh, myself, at that time, Dave Harswick from our association. He attended each one of our meetings. And we met once a month for that period of time to explore and get feedback and voice from the teachers on making any type of change to the instructional day for students. So when you ask Nancy, would they still be around? We kept notes. We did informal surveys with them where they actually, each team would get into a small group and they filled those out, and I would still have those
okay,
that I'd be able to
great.
share with you.
Thank you. I'd love that.
And then as far as people within 5 years in a district our size, there's going to be some attrition.
Oh, for sure.
And some people have left, but there's also many of those people still in our schools doing the heavy lift of the work that needs to be done to ensure a viable and guaranteed curriculum.
Okay. All right, and then this chart that is in here, like, what is, you know, you have the total lunch minutes and the total recess minutes for all of the district except ours, and I wasn't sure what that is.
So when you look at, there's a student day. So the student day right now in the Green Bay School District for elementary, even though we have 3 different varied start times, we all have the same amount of minutes. So currently to the student day, there's 393 minutes. Then there is the instructional day, which is where you take out their lunch and their recesses. And that's actually student contact or instructional minutes. And when you look at the surrounding district, and again, this was done when we first started the exploration in the 2015-16 school year. We are approximately anywhere between 15 and actually about 40 minutes with their 6 surrounding school districts that we worked with to get their times. And we have that much less instruction than the surrounding school districts.
So really Howard Swamico is the only one that is like us. They're about 2 minutes.
Yes, and interestingly enough, right, they also had been looking at that time.
And did they
Dan
do
told
it?
us. I do not know what Howard
Do you know if
Swamico
all of
has
these
done.
are still the same?
I
No.
do not know
Okay.
that. But, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today,
Yeah.
to see if
what
you
we're
want
gonna
us
do.
to continue.
Okay. All right, so that was when, okay, and then in this, you know, what was on the board docs, it says, like if you know, we have 2 options basically, right? Just have the workday the way it is and just have more instructional time. And then if you add another half hour, then it would be the second option. And in the second option, you said, you know, then we could change the structure and culture of the teacher workday to a professional schedule. Is that because then you're thinking that 45 minutes to collaborate every week?
It's the job embedded collaboration.
Okay.
And that's really twofold, Nancy. When you look at our collaborative learning teams, those grade level and sometimes vertical, so horizontal grade level or vertical amongst the grade levels, they work, they get together and they analyze the student data. So the formative assessments that they're working on with kids throughout the month. They then look at who are those kids that are not progressing at the same rate as their peers, and what do we need to do differently for them? Do we need to do more intensive assessment so that we can plan for real intentional instruction? But they plan together, the teachers do. So the professional day would be the 45 minutes if we job embedded during the week every day, if we took on a 4-day rotation. Right now, our teachers receive 180 minutes during the student day, not their day, but the student day. They receive 180 minutes of what we call prep time, where they are, it's their planning time to meet the needs of the children and families that they serve.
180 minutes a day.
180 minutes a week.
Oh.
180 minutes a week.
What did I do wrong?
Yes. 180 minutes a week. So they get an hour of FIAD broken into 2 sessions, an hour of music broken into 2 sessions, and then an hour of art in a 1 session.
That's
per
what it was
week.
when I was there.
Yes. So if we take on more of a professional structure and do the 4-day rotation, it allows them each 45 minutes a day, which is 225. So it's an increase in planning minutes. And that part of that time would be used, not every day, of course, it would depend upon the culture at each school. But those minutes would be used collaborating, planning for, really going deeper with understanding what it is that the students need in order for them to best meet their needs.
Okay, I think I get it now. I think this is where we will really disagree,
Okay.
you know, because of what I think the teachers need in their planning time. In that 180 minutes now, tell me the different things that they're already required to do between the CLTs and all of those things. Do you have a list of those things that are requirements for the teachers already?
So are you asking, Nancy, what is the work that the teachers do when they collaborate together?
No, I'm asking, what are the things required by the district that the teachers need to do in that 180 minutes of planning time?
Sure. So currently they're working on lesson planning. In addition to that, they might be making learning plans for students They're also
Like
meaning
how many
like,
would that be, like generally speaking?
learning plans, like if there's a student. So right now, if a student is falling behind or through the assessments, the teacher sees that they're not progressing at the same rate as their peers, then they would do what is called they prepare for what is called a PLC. Right? A personalized learning plan, and it's different at every school. It depends upon the student's needs. So all the assessments, the curriculum assessments are the same. How the students are performing on those assessments changes from school to school.
So the PLPs and lesson plans, and then what else?
There might be phone calls that you're making with parents.
How about more into the CLT things like where you have to meet after school and then meeting with the literacy coaches, meeting with the
Sure.
interventionists, things
Sure.
like that.
So, right, so you're talking currently, Nancy, correct?
Yeah.
So currently, many of our schools, the majority of our schools work once a week in what's called their after school or before school in their collaborative learning teams.
So is that like for half an hour, an hour, or
It's usually for an hour.
no? Okay, so that just takes that 180 down to 120.
That is
That's
done
outside of-
before or after school.
Oh, it's
So
not.
that's outside
Right,
of
that's
that
outside of that
180.
Oh, wait, say that one more time.
The CLT is outside of that time.
Okay,
That's not during the 180.
So it
because
is
the 180 is just the specials.
correct.
Okay,
It's during the student day.
Specials, lunch, recess.
Yep.
Gets you the 180.
Just the specials. There's a hundred
Specials
and
alone
eighty,
get you 180.
because the lunches, all of our teachers have a 30-minute duty-free lunch,
sort of.
like our students do.
Sort of.
Sort of, you know, like by the
Yes.
time you get them down there and then
Yes.
somebody has to take their
You're right.
medicine and then somebody has to throw up and then somebody has to do something else. I mean, it's not really.
You know what it's like,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So how,
Okay.
do you have more to say?
No, do you have more questions?
So the
Nancy?
CLT then is the only other thing that's required by.
We also do professional learning, so the majority of our schools, once a month, do what's called a literacy team meeting. And that's where they are diving deeper into reading, writing, oracy, working with our curriculum resources. And then we have a more knowledgeable other, the literacy coach, who collaborates with the principal. And then they partner on that, working with the staff. And that is usually once a month. In addition to that, they also, once a month, and this is all outside of the instructional day. So it's before school or after school. Then they also do math. They collaborate in the area of math. We have a relatively new resource, Bridges, but they also work with a variety of different numeracy concepts that they are looking at as far as tier 1 intervention. So in the universal, how do you support through differentiated small groups? They all have what's called a curriculum resource specialist, or CRIS is the acronym for that. That also partners with the principal and they support in some of the learning about that curriculum resource.
So Chris is still a viable thing in Green Bay?
Yes, several of our schools still have, well, Nancy would be able to speak to that because she oversees all of the curriculum resource specialists.
Oh, okay.
Would you want to know more about the Chris's?
Well, remember when we talked this morning and I asked you about like the 6th trait writing in the cafe and the focus units and Chris training was one of the things I did.
When we first rolled out Bridges, it was very intense, the training and support for the schools. The curriculum resource specialists, the math supports. And now we have 3 math supports that service all of our elementary schools. They all have, I think, 10 schools or 12 schools. And then they support either whatever the principal in a professional development or the teachers professionally. Teachers can call them and they can go in and assist them. They're stuck, or they have kind of a tangled student, they'll take a look at the data with them and make some recommendations. So it's a lot like the coach, but it's,
So how many people do you think, like a regular teacher, let's take second grade, would meet with outside of their day? You know, not only just members in the other second grade teacher, but, you know, all the interventionists. I mean, that's a lot of work.
the teachers for the Chris's, they contact the Chris, it's not
No,
required.
I'm
to
just
be-
talking about all the other ones.
Oh, sure, it's a great
Ones
deal
that
of
she-
support.
Yeah, yeah.
So the teachers who have been, it's a job embedded level of support for our teachers. So that during the day, right in their classroom, they have a coach who comes in and helps support them. The majority of our coaching cycles are done because teachers have reached out and asked for that support. They're analyzing data in their collaborative learning teams, having conversations with their peers, and they're saying, we need support, someone to help us grow professionally. So instead of sending them to other consulting firms or conferences, at which we do some of that, but this would be actually taking what they're learning, that theory, and actually putting it into practice with a more knowledgeable other. Our coaches are highly trained in the area of literacy processing, where they're able to enter into real collegial conversations, where the coach is dialoguing with them around what they see in practice and how to, they even look sometimes at students and look at the data from the students, and then they collaborate with the teacher to talk about what are those next steps in learning for that child.
That's student-centered coaching is the model we use now. And if, Nancy, if you go and visit some of the classrooms, you may see two teachers in there teaching, and that's intentional. So the teacher's trying a strategy or skill and the coach is in there.
How long
To
has this
support
been
it.
going on? Like, the,
Should we
the
be
culture,
preparing for a different?
a different,
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just
Sorry.
starting it. No, because I can see where it relates,
okay.
but I also didn't ask them to prepare
Oh,
anything for this
okay.
topic.
All right.
So Nancy,
Okay.
there were 5 original coaches that started in the 2004-2005 school year.
All right, I won't ask anymore. There was just one more. Okay, why do you feel teachers need more professional time? But now what you're saying, I understand because they're asking for it.
That's right.
So you haven't heard that teachers are burned out and that they have left the teaching profession and become coaches because they couldn't do everything all the coaches and interventionists have said to do?
I hear a lot from our teachers that it's a heavy lift. I hear that a lot.
do
I
too.
see it every day. I'm in the schools.
Okay.
And that's what all these levels of support are for. And I often do hear from teachers who leave our district and come back, and they say they're coming back because they were receiving support and they felt that inside, that sense of agency that they were growing as professionals. So I'm sure there are other people out there that may feel differently about it. But right now, that's what I'm hearing. And I hear it not only hands-on when I'm in schools, hearing it from teachers, but I also hear it from principals who are leading professional learning and responsible for evaluating and supporting supervision and evaluation of teachers through our EE process, our educator effectiveness process.
Thank you.
Teaching is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's become more complex, for sure. You're absolutely right, Nancy.
Was there in all the notes and focus groups and things like that, any kind of preference from teachers? I mean, are they thinking that adding an extra half hour to their day is a great idea? Is it mixed opinions? What was?
Yes, that's a great
Of course, this
question.
was back in
Yeah.
5-6 years ago, but I'm just wondering what the general consensus was.
So the general consensus, first, with clarity, I want you to know we're not adding 30 additional minutes to the teacher day.
Oh, that's right.
It's just the instructional day for the students. So it's how the teachers, it's the amount of student contact time with children. And they were there's of course, we did pros and cons, Delta Plus, and there are some challenges that go along with it. What they liked is that their time spent in their professional day, meaning a teacher's professional day is 7:30 to 4 on average. We know that they work outside of that day often. They're at home putting their children to bed or getting their families tucked in, and then they're doing planning also. What they liked is that job embedded, that 45 minutes a day. Some of them right now have several days throughout the week that they have no planning time at all. That was a huge plus for them, and that they were collaborating with other people to help support the lesson planning, the things that become very hard to do in isolation when you're in a classroom by yourself. In this model, the 4-day rotation, we worked with Dr. Reddick back in 2015 and his associates, and it's the 45 minutes a day. You plan for a master schedule that allows grade level teachers 45 minutes every day together. So you block their time. And then you put in either an intervention block or a differentiation block that allows you to work in smaller groups in a real intentional way based off of the data that you've been analyzing with in the collaborative learning team.
So we're adding 45 minutes per day or per week.
Of job embedded planning time. It is 45 minutes. So we went from 180 to 225.
So, and that's teacher time. And you're talking about adding an extra half an hour to instructional time, but not increasing the teacher's day. So where does this time come from?
So it's about 21 to 23 minutes of additional student contact time that the teachers would have.
But how do you have, I think the question is, how do you have, right, how do you have more time with kids and more planning time and not increase the length of the teacher day? Like, how do you do that?
Right, you don't increase the teacher day, it would still be 7:30 to 4.
Okay.
You decrease the amount of directed time before and after school, meaning how many literacy teams, they wouldn't be in collaborative learning teams anymore. Some of those schools that were having 2 a month of literacy or math said that the literacy coach would actually get scheduled into working during the instructional day when kids are at art, music, or phy ed, or the 4th rotation in that 45 minutes. Because now you have that whole team together during the day. So the 30 minutes comes out of what normally would be what the teacher was working in the morning or in the afternoon. They have 120 minutes total. And that usually is a staff meeting, CLT time. That's
Bus
all
duty.
now, bus duty, you got it, all kinds of additional duties. So you would minimize that. And we actually have a chart that the teams helped us put together as an example of what that could look like. And if you'd like, I can sit down with you. I have it here and can explain it to you with an example from one of the schools that we
Like they
worked
said
at.
that in your memo that they could do a bus duty that all the time because they would be available, right?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Nancy.
You know, the plus and the delta things?
Yeah.
Opportunities, transportation, right? Can't get it apart. Allows force teachers to monitor dismissal of students for 30 minutes.
Yes, so when you look, that's when we are looking at the 3 different times because we have an 8 to 3, an 8:30 to 3:30, or a 9 to 4. Like if we
Right,
still
right.
varied it, if you release at, let's just say that the day you release at 3 and teachers can leave at 3:30, what you don't sometimes, if they have that duty for the first 15 minutes, if a student, the teacher would be at school for longer periods of time if there was an issue with transportation that you'd be able to call and say, or if a parent called and said a student didn't come home. So it allowed that specific time, the 9 to 4, I think it was. There was a comment in there about it allowing that teachers would still be at school. If you release kids at 4 and the teacher workday is at 4, it ends at 4. Teachers are gone and there's nobody
Does
there.
that happen in Green Bay?
No, that was in this proposal and why we were recommending not doing a 9 to 4.
Oh, okay,
So if you look at that, those were the 3 different time options.
right, this was option 2.
So are you only recommend, is the current recommendation only option 1 in this?
So the current, well, there's 2 options. The first one, and this was back in 2015-16. So really today, what we're asking is, what would the board like us to continue to look at the extended instructional day? And if that is the direction, then we would go back in and have new teams coming, because we would want the teachers who are working with our children today, not 5 years ago, to be a part of this. And then also our leaders. So option 1 was just increasing the instructional day by 30 minutes. Option 2 is increasing the instructional day by 30 minutes and doing the professional planning time where it's job embedded, where there would be a 4-day, 45-minute rotation. So every teacher, every day would have 45 minutes.
How was that 4-day rotation in a 5-day week?
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
So currently you would add a FIAD. So it might look like at 2nd grade at Eisenhower Elementary, your day 1 is FIAD, day 2 is music, day 3 is FIAD, day 4 is art. And then so it's a 4-day rotation. So then on Friday, you would start day 1 again.
Would you have music twice or you
We wouldn't.
consolidate it? Okay.
And yeah,
Okay. Oh, I
and we
see.
have documents on that, how many additional instructional minutes for art, music, and FIAD. And it actually, when we did this in 2015, there was a new DPI act that came out
Right.
that it was to increase the FIAD minutes per week. And that's why we looked at that as a 4-day rotation and worked with our consultants, Dr. Reddix and an associate.
So, I mean, I'm interested in continuing to look at this. I want to know how much it costs, because it's going to cost a lot. And then, do we have enough, are there enough FIAD teachers out there to fill all these extra slots of FIAD? I mean, I don't know what I haven't heard that we're short of FIAD teachers, but, and then also, I think, are there cost savings somewhere to help justify the increase in cost? I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but anyway, I'd be interested in knowing the cost. So the cost of paying our teachers well, we don't pay the teachers anymore. That's
No.
right. That's how that works.
We're not increasing their day.
Right. Yeah, you're decreasing the number of big meetings and increasing the number of collaborative working with their grade level teams.
In our schools where collaborative learning time has been implemented very comprehensively, and there's been a culture for it, our teachers tell us that that's where they do their planning, that they're not spending as much time at home
Right.
after they put their family, after the children go to sleep, that a lot of that planning is done with their colleagues because they're all learning together.
So since this has been implemented, has there been big growth in our scores and things?
We have had our scores, both literacy and math. We saw great growth in our
That
math
was the
scores.
bridges, right?
Great math
Yeah,
prior
it's a good
to
program. Mhm.
prior to the pandemic. We have great data on that. We started to see some really good things in our curriculum assessments when we started to really look at literacy, core universal, K-5 with implementation. I feel, based off of a very short amount of time, looking at some of the work that they're doing with the letters training, focusing on
That's a new program too, then, right?
That we'll see that now
So-
also, Nancy. I think you and I talked
Yeah.
about that.
The Zoom thing.
And units of study for phonics with Hawkins, units of study for phonics for K2. So more to come on that.
I think that, you know, if you're gonna look at it, that's really good, but I don't think it should be right now. I think there's too much on teachers' plates. They have to get back in the classroom and we just have to see how this pandemic thing is going to go. But eventually, I think I would like to see a survey maybe to see if they're ready to start talking about that additional 30 minutes. But I'm glad to know that Dave Harswick was in this from the get-go. Okay.
Okay, so we have an option 1 and an option 2, and they have different lengths of the teacher workday listed right in the grid. So how does that work if we're not increasing the teacher day? If options 1 and 2 are still on the table, or are you only reporting option 2 because it was in the report, but it's not what you're recommending?
This was all work that was done again 5 to 6 years ago over a duration of 2 years. So when you take on a professional schedule, when the student's day ends, the teachers are able to leave within a half hour afterwards. So there is more flexibility for them and more opportunities for them to direct the work that they're doing before and after school. So some of our surrounding school districts have more of a professional schedule where this is the body of work that needs to be done, and you have more flexibility to attend to the things you need to attend to in the majority of the
So,
school districts.
if you'll forgive me, I'm just
No,
trying
it's
to, I'm just
okay.
trying to wrap my head around the, okay. So let's take option 1.
Yeah.
If we do option 1, and for simplicity, let's say I have an 8 to 3 student day that didn't change.
Right.
Okay. Today, and I realize it's a couple minutes on either side of 8. Today, if the student day is 8 to 3, when do I, as a teacher, when am I required to report, knowing that many teachers come earlier? And when am I required to be in the building until, knowing that many teachers do choose to stay later?
So currently,
today.
right now, our 8 o'clock start schools, the students leave at 2:30 and the
I'm
children.
sorry, 8 to 2:30, my
8 to
mistake.
2:30, and the teachers are required to stay until 4. Their workday ends at 4.
Okay. And they're required to come in just to be there for 8,
7:30. Teacher workday is 7:30 to 4.
with a duty-free lunch, which
30
makes
minute
that,
duty free,
40
hours,
Not
40
eight.
hours.
8.5. with
Okay,
a
so
30
8 and a half
minute.
minus a half, okay?
Yeah.
That's today,
Mhm.
okay. So then we have, so option 1, if I just look at it would be an actual longer student day.
Yeah.
And the teacher workday would still be 7:30 to 4, just like it is now in option 1.
And your specials would remain the same. There
Okay.
would be 180 minutes of prep time during the student instructional day. So all of your collaborative time and all of your professional learning would take place in that schedule, it would take place between the hours of 3 and 4. Because students can't come at 8, we serve breakfast at the majority of our schools. So teachers are there working with kids. They start at 7:30 and usually by about 20 to 8, they are in the lunchroom working with kids, supervising breakfast.
So in option 2.
Yep.
Staying with the 8 to 2:30 school, which has now become an 8 to 3 school to extend the student time.
Mhm.
I now actually have my required time in the building. Though, to be clear, many teachers do come early, many teachers do work late. Actually decreases by 30 my mandatory time in the building is actually decreased by 30 minutes, so then do I not have a duty-free lunch anymore?
Yep, you have a professional schedule. So you
Okay, so
still have
I-
your 30-minute duty free. And there may be times when the principal needs you for an IEP meeting. Principal may need you for an all-staff meeting. Principal may need you for professional learning that's happening. But they would they don't have all their collaborative learning teams and as many. When we did this study, it went from 8 to 12 meetings per month down to 4 to 6 per month. So they have professional discretion on how they use that time. And that's what a professional schedule is. Someone else is not dictating every day how you're using that. you
But there
still-
would be an expectation then if I'm on the 7:30 to 3:30 schedule, I would know that somewhere over the course of the week, well, almost all teachers probably are there a couple extra hours. There would be a general expectation that on average, I would be around 2.5 hours extra. It might be 3 sometimes, it might be 2 sometimes, but I'm assuming we're not. Right, I mean, there's going to be extra meetings outside of that, otherwise we're just cutting the workday by a half hour.
Right, correct.
And I
You're
guess
accurate.
my only concern here is if we were to do that and say that we're going to call it 8, we're gonna have 8 hours with still a half-hour duty-free lunch, I would need some assurances that we wouldn't have meeting creep starting to crawl, me and not like a person being creep, but creeping in. Would it be, this 2 hours one week, 3 hours another week in addition, before and after school? Would that kind of start becoming, as we have, valuable initiatives that we're doing, would that start becoming kind of always 3 and then sometimes bumping up to 3.5, because you might have some important meeting that would make it 3.5, but then I would expect another week to have fewer meetings to be 2. That's what I'm worried about, that 2.5 average per week becomes 3, and just so slowly that you don't even notice that it's happening. And it would be easy to not notice it's happening to a point, because teachers usually put in more hours than their scheduled day anyways. So now they're still doing that, but more of it is taken up. I guess my thought on this is it's a little different where the school start time was more recent, and I think it's a fairly cut and dry that it's just about making a decision. I would be a bit worried about the stress it might create to even be, because here you have to convene a bigger committee with reps from all the buildings and everything. I would feel better. I'm not opposed to exploring it. I would think we're getting back after COVID to put this on top of it, not even knowing how the year's gonna go with COVID. I would probably rather reconvene a massive undertaking like this, for me personally, next year rather than this year. I guess that's me, Nancy.
Yeah, me too, but the thing is that if you're gonna have it coincide with the other thing. That's the only problem with that.
That's how it came back.
Yeah,
How it
that's
really
what I
like
figured.
into it at this
Yeah.
time.
But I think we could even come back and talk about it. Let's see, like in 3 months or 6 months or something. I mean, everybody's just so getting ready to start the school year. I don't think we need to put anything else on anybody's plate.
And if we,
Are we ready? I mean, I think the same could be true for middle school and high school. I mean, not knowing how the year is gonna go. Do we want to go into the next school year with new start times and things like that? I mean, I know I've been pushing this off, but I wonder if it makes more sense to kind of let the dust settle from COVID this year, rather, because that's gonna be a lot of work. That's a lot of shifting for middle school and high school teachers. They've got a completely different workday. You're asking them to make a lot of changes too. And I don't know, I mean, is that, I'll leave that up to you, but is that a lot to put on our secondary teachers and staff? You know, while they're trying to figure out how to recover from COVID and then whatever curveballs get thrown our way this year.
What if we did just some preliminary cost, looking at
Sure.
busing and any other additional expense for either the whole school start time or just the elementary, just bring some of that back. If you give us a little time there too, Grace, to get that information.
Yeah, no, that sounds
I
good.
guess that, you know, the difference to me is that one of these two, you're talking about 4 or 5 people per school meeting and discussing this elementary day thing. You're talking about involving over 100 people in a round of committee meetings about this, where we would still be getting teacher feedback about the school start, the secondary start time, which also somewhat changes in some elementary start times. I would rather, honestly, I don't want to throw away something that I think is a clear-cut educational benefit, which is the secondary day, because we need more time to have a deep dive committee on the extended elementary day. I would like to think that if there's interest in the possibility in going forward, I would hate to have that be just pushed to the back burner because of what we might do with elementary.
I think it was you, Nancy, who articulated it when we started the conversation. When you are leading a comprehensive PK-12 school, you recognize that what's happening PK-5 as a grade band impacts 6-12 and vice versa. And as a result, when we first started this, we were moving them together and doing a lot of analysis around transportation. And right now, the barrier that I see from those 14, 15, and 15, 16 year that came out was transportation. You have limited amount of buses that can be on, that are available to be on routes. So I wonder if for right now, even looking at, we could work with our transportation department and do an analysis. We do have some documents. I have documents that show how many routes it impacts. And we could do a cost analysis at that time.
If my decision is, I mean, yes, cost may come into play, but I'm certainly willing to spend more for what's better educationally, and the secondary start time is overwhelming academic research about the benefits of it. And although I do understand some need for, you know, school times to line up, but for me, one is much more critical than the other. And you know, this is something that's coming back from years ago, and probably a lot of teachers have never heard of it. It's the idea of a school start time. That committee was more recent, and even if teachers haven't heard of it, the national discussion is so prominent about it that I would think few secondary teachers would be surprised to find out it was on the menu of discussion, probably compared to this. For me to go forward with any really deep dive on the elementary day, I guess I'd like to at least get a pulse on where teachers are at today with, and I would, for me to vote yes on any of the elementary increases, I would need to know that there was overwhelming staff support behind. I would be willing to push back a little bit more if there was just a good amount of staff support on the high school day. I would be willing to push back and argue for it, but it would be harder for me to argue without strong staff buy-in there. Wanting to make sure we get to our other topic today, should we basically just report this forward with a neutral kind of recommendation and then have other board members weigh in on where to go next with that?
I'd like to see it just come back to committee with the information that you're gathering.
To hear?
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, I'm in favor of that.
I don't know how long it'll take for you to have.
What kind of, are you talking about busing and
the costs,
increase in
the,
staff?
You know, are there
Okay,
creative solutions to the co-curricular or work schedules for students, all the questions that we asked earlier.
the co-curricular, so you're talking at a secondary level?
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole package, the
Sure.
late start and the for high school, middle school, and the elementary. I mean, because otherwise you bring it to the board, they're gonna have the same questions we have, so
Yeah,
doesn't, you know, it makes more sense to bring it back to the board when our questions have been answered. I mean, we could bring it to committee, I don't know, like, again, I don't know how, in November, is that?
We'll shoot for December if that's okay, December, January.
okay, but that takes both of them out of the realm of possibility for 22-23. December 20, is that kind of too?
If the board made this, if we brought it back in December, I went to the board in January, depending on how much time the board wants to make a decision.
Oh, okay, I don't mean physically possible, I mean reasonable. I mean, reasonable to a public that's gonna be affected by it, employers that's gonna be affected by it.
And it might depend on how much you talked earlier about maybe having some additional community engagement.
Well, we already have the community engagement about, I mean, yes, we should have a couple of forums, but it's really I want more, I think more time is needed about the elementary day. I don't think significantly more, I think just some cost reports and bus reports are needed for the first one. Though I'm not blind to the fact that one may affect the other as well, but if we were, honestly, if we were faced for I would be prepared to vote barring any substantial new information, if I realize this may not happen, if I was required to, if the time came in September to take a vote on, and it was not a now or never vote, I would vote no on the elementary and yes on the secondary, because the proof is clear for one of them and more time is needed on the other one. Again, because so much time has passed in between, so. Because I also don't think we've worked out like what it means for a committee to ask something to come back to the committee. If these committees don't have any authority, does the board have to acquiesce to it going back to committee?
We keep it in committee until you're ready.
So then a committee could sit on something forever, theoretically. I mean, I don't think anyone plans to, but could they?
I think once the information's in, then the committee would either vote to refer or vote not to. And then that's when if the committee voted not to refer, the board could always take it up again. So I want to, and I'll just offer this, I haven't gone through this, my previous district. Andrew raises a really good point about the ripple effects from changing the schedule. And I know what we did was we made that determination by the end of the school year for the following school year. So that there was a full school year for the academic implementation, the extracurricular implementation, and then as Andrew shared, all of the ancillary childcare, work schedule, et cetera. So we had a year to work with the community.
You're saying
23.
22-23 might already be too.
Yeah.
reluctantly, especially given that this year isn't starting fully typical, but I guess I am concerned about, again, the rights of we had a very clear, with work sessions, we had except for one time I can think of, we had a very clear expectation that an agenda item would go to a work session prior to the board meeting, then it would be on the board agenda and get an up or down vote, which could include the board saying we need more time, or the board saying let's refer it back to the administration. So I just want to make sure that this would be a new thing if a committee without the board, if the rest of the board wanted to say no, just run with this right now, I think they have the right to say that. But you know, so how's that work? Would that be a valid motion? So would we be posting for possible action on this if the board wanted to direct the administration to just, nope, we disagree with the committee and we want you to go for it now?
So if your report on the next board meeting is that you're gonna gather more information and you're gonna come back at a later time, and that's the report that you make at the meeting, if the board hears that and says that's not moving in the direction or the speed we want to, then the board could say either, that would be a report of the September board meeting, they could either direct it to come to the full board in October for a vote, they could ask for a special meeting in between to take a vote on it. So it does give the board the ability to, let's just, worst case scenario, you've got a group of three that's trying to vary something, right? Then the rest of the board has the ability to follow them on that.
So it wouldn't be posted for potential.
Unless you recommend action on the 13th, it would only be posted for an update. But that would.
But then the board, okay, then the board
Yep.
could still make a motion because it would be procedural only, it wouldn't be new
Exactly.
debate. The board could make a motion to schedule that to a date certain, or to say, nope, this is gonna be on October, or even
Special
the
meeting.
board could make a motion to say it's not.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. You don't want to set it up so that procedurally it can vary.
not that it's likely, but
No.
all things need to be considered,
Yep.
okay. So we'll then recommend out more time for committee, and then the board as a whole could. Well, they wouldn't make a motion to direct the administration to proceed full tilt, because we wouldn't be posted for that. They could make a motion to schedule this to a date certain.
Right. And maybe one thing you might want to think about is between now and that September meeting, if there are specific things that you want the group to come back, that if you can share those directly with Vicky, we can make sure that that's in the narrative that shows up on the September 13th meeting, because then that advertises both to your fellow board members and to the public. These are the things that we want to know more about. We want to know more about busing costs, co-curricular conflicts, things like that. So we can be very specific about that in the report out so that people see that.
So will Andrew and Vicky work together to make that? Is that how that works then?
Yeah, and if you have
Can we-
specific things that you want to make sure that we bring
Like what
back
we've
to
already
you.
said, and then if there's anything more, then we,
Yep.
okay,
I would assume it's extremely likely that the rest of the board would agree with more committee time more board committee time for this stuff. I would think, but I just wanted to make sure that we covered the what ifs, so. All right, if there's nothing else on this then, so we will go ahead and introduce the course book. So we have the memo with the changes.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Nancy, go ahead.
So I will go through this process as we have done in the past around November, here early. And that's done intentionally, so that we can get our hopefully students registering earlier, so that we can find staff to teach what students need, right? And so Mr. Murley's leading us through this acceleration process, but it makes perfect sense to filling our classrooms with the best of the best. So just a little bit, I'll go through if you don't mind. This is an annual event and it is required that the board take action on this, on both course books. And just a few of the changes that are being proposed. And I know, Nancy, that you had a question around the Advanced English 9. Many of you are aware because you approved the adoption of our study sync curriculum. Advanced English 9 is no longer needed with the rewriting of our curriculum. Advanced 9 needs would be met and all the standards would be met in our English Language Arts 9 course. That is the reason for that. It's pretty rigorous and very, very much differentiated for teachers, very teacher friendly. The next piece would be Illustrator Fundamentals. It's a non-credit option. And that's been removed because NWTC has actually offered it as a course now for 10 to 12. Photoshop, it's a non-dual credit option that it's been removed because NWTC has opened it for college credits in grades 11 through 12. The printing process, it has not been offered for a while at Southwest, and so it's become what we call obsolete. And it's due to the changes in the printing industry and the labor markets, the way that it's designed. Research and development, this course has been replaced with an updated independent study policy and procedure. So if a student were wanting to take research and development, they'd simply do it under the independent study for policy and procedures.
They can only do that twice, where theoretically you could take research and development and still have your 2 independent studies left. Right.
We have some of those rules in place. There'll be more policy work coming forward to the board that opens that up for students to have their needs met to what the students' needs need to be. So thank you, Andrew, for bringing that forward. The work experience and career exploration program, that was an alternative education program. And it was recommended that it be replaced by other options.
What's not good about it, or what's lacking in it, or what's covered elsewhere?
It's outdated.
And so the other options are already in place.
The other options are in place and they have more in line reference and shall I say the actual the course that they offer is far much more in line with a course that all students would take than for it to be a separate course. Any questions on those that are going to be eliminated, the additions?
I guess I would like to see maybe some written material between now and the board meeting about what the other options are and why they cover a replacement for WESEP adequately. I'm not saying I necessarily dealt it, but I may need to explain why that is. And in district history, we had a successful night school program. I believe a night program that we were told it's fine, it'll be absorbed into the day, and I think we really dropped the ball on that, and I heard from teachers. Oh, did it go and come back? It left and come back before your time.
Okay.
Before your time,
Since I've been.
and maybe it was a different one, but it definitely left and came back, because I know I'm glad it's back.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem anymore. I just want to make sure that if I get a call, if we get a call about, hey, my kid was doing WESEP and now blank, I have to be able to articulate why we do that.
And is that like, excuse me, is that like where they work half the day out, like if they're in auto mechanics or something, is that it, like in high school?
Well, that's a very similar.
Another option.
I was gonna say, that's another option.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe I'm not familiar with this one.
So we just need to elaborate on what the other options are so you can see.
Right.
And even on what this one is.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'll meet with Renee and get that for you.
Okay, and then going on this additions.
Okay, the additions to the course books, as now we have all of our schools that are in the course book none are exempted out. So Leonardo da Vinci is for the first time in our course books. So you can take a look at all the courses that are offered at Leonardo da Vinci at our middle school. Also specialized programs, courses that have been previously approved by the board. And for special programs, they've been running, but there's no representation for these courses in the grade book. And so we kind of cleaning house and organizing. And so the Leonardo da Vinci Community School capstone project now is listed in the ELDO section of the course book. The Fine Arts Institute at East High School, the course for specialized activities for students involved in that program, they're all listed with their corresponding schools. The International Baccalaureate Middle School Program for Franklin and West. These aspects of the program are embedded throughout the year and students are enrolled via course numbers. So we're calling out all of those, I would say, as pathways grew in our district. Some of them never landed in our course books, so they have already been approved. We're just simply aligning them into the course book where they belong. Employment experience, previously available work-based learning opportunity is now in the course book, and we'll be expanding on those. This course will be aligned with the Wisconsin Employability Skills Certification. Also, courses that include opportunities for industry certifications have certifications noted as part of the course description. There will be a cosmetic, as we go through this process, we will be adding more of the cosmetic pieces and indicating in multiple areas where the industry certifications have been awarded. We're waiting to the middle of September when those all come through. The courses that we offer actually have a certification that align with them. So they'll be very cosmetic. It really won't make any change other than the students and families know that there's a certification that could go with it.
Excuse me one second. So Emily and Megan, what this means is you now can look in that course book and see the classes that are offered throughout the entire district.
Correct.
If you were at that IB meeting that we had back in the summer, it talked about, some of you mentioned, didn't know that was an opportunity. It actually is. And this is a great way for all of our students to know what's out there.
Thank you, Vicki. Course changes, some of the changes we made to our course titles were because of gender specific names, so we made them more appropriate. Computer repair and troubleshooting, we're now going to offer that at Preble, dual credit. Environmental science will be a dual credit now available at both Preble and Southwest. Intro to engineering, Project Lead the Way, we have dual credits now available at Southwest. Has a lot to do with the program that they have in place there and their capstone program, so it's a nice pathway there by adding that. Culinary Arts 3 dual credit is now also available for students at East.
How
And
do you,
then-
how do you build up to it if you're at East? Would that just be through personal experiences? Or is it because a lot of kids take 1 and 2 East neighborhood students go to Preble to take 1 and then to take 2, and so now they could get 3 back at their home school?
Yes, actually, it's my understanding they can take 1, 2, and 3 now. They did some remodeling for kitchens at
I thought
East.
all our high schools offer 1 and 2 culinary,
So East has 1 and 2, and now we're adding
Right.
3.
but we have.
I think at least
West
all you guys do.
is- Yeah, but East has had 1 and 2 for a long
Long
time.
time.
Yeah.
We
So they're
needed
just
an
expanding
expansion
to-
on the kitchen.
to the-
So the specialty program at Preble is only needed to facilitate with Preble, and it sounds like now East, that major focus at Preble is only to add 3.
Yeah.
3
Okay.
at East. And it's not the same, they're not gonna be in competition for their catering. I've been reassured of that. I can't remember who's doing the cupcakes and who's doing steak, but
Right.
they won't be in competition. Any other questions on that? The other pieces are really just for, it's easier to schedule, so single course names that have been credited for our bridges construction and renovation and Bay Link manufacturing are replaced are replacing multiple NWTCE courses. So students will continue to earn college credit, but the single courses are far more efficient and course selection for scheduling. So you'll see we have advanced metals and manufacturing, dual credit course, carpentry and home construction, dual credit would be a 3-period new home construction option for the Bridges program. And the home remodeling renovation dual credit would be a 2-period home renovation option for the Bridges program. It adds flexibility into that program. Those are the changes for the 22-23 course book.
Member questions? Go ahead.
I'm backing up to, I went through some of the course book, and on page 8 of the high school one, it says that so that some courses are part of the universal credit transfer. This is under dual credit. Universal credit transfer agreement between the University of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Technical College. And then it says they can be transferred to all UW systems. Is that?
The UW courses are transferable.
Is that a recent change? Because it used to, I mean, you couldn't take your, and what's included in the UCTA? Is that like the 32 credits of core credits that you can take with you to college, so that then you can start your major credits right away? Or what are those?
I'm not sure
Yeah.
what page is that.
There was
I
a,
think they're your distribution credits, but we can definitely find that out.
and so you can transfer those automatically to Madison?
Yes,
Okay, that's new then,
yeah, it used to
In
be
the
just to
last-
the system campuses,
right?
and you could not to Madison,
Yeah.
but you can do it now
Oh,
throughout the
okay,
entire system.
okay, so that's
But I do
new.
believe they count towards your general distribution.
Right.
Yeah.
Not your major, right,
Correct.
yeah, okay. And then, just a,
Transfer agreement, yeah, yes.
and then just a request under enrollment. It took me a minute or so to figure out FVTC, just because it's not,
Sure.
you know, I finally figured it out.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't a minute, but it took me a little while. And then the same with UWO. I'm just wondering if, I mean, everybody knows UWGB, but
Sure.
just kind of spelling that out so people don't have to stop and wonder. I mean, I knew it was Oshkosh because I knew they had that.
That's easy enough change to make. We can
So
read out.
anyway,
those
yeah,
documents,
just-
you bet.
Spell those out so it's a little quicker for people to figure that out. And then on page 2 of the high school, when I clicked the link at the bottom of that page, it says www.careerclusters.org. You see where I am thinking? It actually took me to a CTE page. And I'm just wondering if it would be, because it took me a little while. I'm like, okay, these are not career clusters. How do I find this? And I'm clicking top things and I think, I just wonder if you can put, because it's,
Yes.
what I have is careertech.org/career-clusters. That link takes you straight to the career clusters page.
So you don't
Anyway,
have to
just
go
to
up to
make it
career tech
quicker.
yet, do the pull down and then hit the career cluster.
Yeah, because then because it's, let me just plug this in and see if it works.
Yeah, got it.
Yep, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because then that second address takes you right to the career clusters.
Thank you very
I
much.
just don't want people to get frustrated trying to navigate a
Sure, not knowing
website.
which drop down menu to go to.
I'm usually pretty persistent, but not everybody is. Yeah, I like, you know, I don't have any problem with the changes. I like the choir, tenor bass, treble choir addition. I think that's good. Yeah, otherwise, I don't know anything else.
Nancy, do you have any?
Nope.
I guess I'll just point out because I'm sure someone's probably gonna ask, are we changing it from men's and women's choir because we want to be woke? And in fact, nope, it's because you're gonna go into a choir based on your voice range, and I would assume, well, it might be extraordinarily unlikely in adult professional singing for maybe those who overlap, probably almost never when we're talking about adolescents, they probably, and I don't know what we do. Do we unofficially mix between choirs now, or is just someone really, really low voice in the female or really high voice in the male, and they just work it out, or?
Well, I
I don't know.
can certainly look into that for you.
But we don't have to too high, I'm curious, but we don't have to look into it too hard, because we're just fixing it, we're gonna say if your voice is low, you're in bass, and if your voice is high, you're in treble, so we're not.
Are either of you in choir?
I'm in the music department.
Are
From
you-
what I know, it's more just like girls in women's choir, and it's not really like based on any sort of, the only thing that's different is like concert choir is the more blended mix.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, it's not.
You think the new course titles will work for recommendation for what we're doing right now?
Let me look one more time. For the men's choir, I didn't even know level I have a men's choir. I thought it was like, there was concert choir we have like during third period. But then I thought like the first hour, there was some sort of mix going on already, so I'm not sure.
There might be.
Or you might have perhaps men's and women's choir were in the book but ran at the same time and became a combined. choir. At any rate,
It's fixed.
it's fixable, this way, because there's not,
Oh, sorry, I just remembered.
okay, yeah.
I think women's choir is like at least that probably was like the entrance choir that a lot of my friends took like freshman year. And then if they audition and get into concert choir, then that's like the mix. But if they don't, then the girls who are in women's choir will go to the like men's choir class. I don't know if they call it a different thing, but it's like the men's choir class that's with both.
Okay,
So
okay.
And maybe
Oh.
just for reference, if anyone watches The Voice, I think it's The Voice, the gentleman from Appleton who went so far in the competition. Will be in the Independent Choir. You've heard him sing. Very high register.
Okay.
Okay, I have one more thing on that's somewhat related to the course book. I believe there's still a board motion in effect that both, and I see it's in the course books, but in the course book and offered, sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. But my understanding is there is a board motion that was passed that said with no specified end date that both math pathways would continue to be offered at West. So are we committed to doing that even if numbers are small?
I did ask Melissa and Beth to look into whether there is a motion, and they haven't found one yet.
Okay, I'll let you know if I,
Thank you.
it was. Oh, okay, we don't need to spend any time, I'll find it. Okay, anything else to come before the committee? All right. All right, thank you everyone for coming. I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Someone, when you want,
Oh, I second that.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned, thank you.
So.